Hello, dear listener, and welcome to this episode 10 or 11 or something of our beloved podcast, Hell If We Know. You may have noticed by this point that I've made the intro music and the timbre of my own voice particularly spooky today. That's because this is our first ever Halloween special episode extravaganza, and it's only about a week late, which is not bad considering the rate we've been producing episodes at lately, and that's mostly my fault. Anyway, I don't have a lot to say about this episode, and I'll kind of let it do its own thing as you listen to it, but I will say we had a lot of phrases in this one that were hot contenders for becoming title of the episode, and unfortunately we could only pick one, so I just wanted to name a few of the other options that we were looking at so that you can know that they were options. One of them is let's go to Aztec hell together. Another top contender is Buddhism, which was something Chris says later in the podcast. I think you'll enjoy hearing that. Another one is maybe be afraid of rabies. We've got particularly sacrificey. Sad things about dogs is unfortunately something I thought about calling this one. And possibly one of my favorites is suck on cows. So, needless to say, you're in for an episode. Hope you like it.
My question to you is, are dogs racist? I am sure that you have heard this question before, and new evidence that I found on the internet, so it must be true, has shown me that so since dogs see like fewer colors than humans, they see in like many shades of gray or something instead of like all the vibrant colors that humans see. It was explained to me, again, via this internet thing that has probably no bearing on actual factuality, but they said something like, since dogs only see a bunch of shades of gray, when they see a black person, they just see like a big dark shadow. And so that's why dogs are like stereotypically more afraid of black people than they are of white people. And this is a stereotype that I have seen, and I'm not sure if it's always true, but I've definitely heard people talking about it, and I've seen it in real life. So what do you think? Are dogs racist?
I think there definitely are some dogs that are racist, but it's like the same with like babies can be racist in the exact same way. Where like the first time a baby gets like held by your black friend, because we all have one black friend. That's right. How white people operate. And we all have our baby, and when it's time...
when it's time, you introduce the baby to the black friend. Slowly,
exactly.
Carefully, nurturing.
But they still cry every time.
Yeah, okay.
Because it's like, this person doesn't look like mommy and daddy. It's a whole new person that looks very different from all these other people. And I think dogs can be kind of the same way. And it's the same way, like, in Africa, if you, like, the first time an African child meets a white person, they're like, what the hell is this? This is really spooky looking.
That is true.
Yeah, so I think it's, like, you know, a dog's naturally going to be like, what is this? This is freaking me out, if it doesn't see a lot of black people. But I think, like, if a dog knows a lot of black people... Also, dogs rely so much more on, like, hearing and smell anyway. So I feel like it'd be easy to overcome the shadowy thing.
Okay, well, I'm convinced. That's a lot less sad than I thought it was.
Cool.
I will say, though, I think Asian people are racist against different types of dogs, and here's my reasoning for this. Purely anecdotal, but It's had like 100% success rate so far. So a friend of mine got a dog recently, and she and I have been walking this dog together around Cheongju frequently. This is a small black dog. All other dogs that I've seen in Korea are small little white puffball dogs. It's this kind of thing that you see in like cartoons and stuff, but it's real. Like Koreans and Asians love their tiny little accessory dogs. Like here, I feel like dogs are more like man's best accessory rather than man's best friend. Like people carry their dogs places. Really, they don't walk their dogs. They have them in little backpacks. They dress them up in little sweaters and socks and booties and things, and like they paint their nails. It's very odd to me, but it's just the culture here. But all these dogs are small little white puffballs. Like I said, they look like little marshmallows. But the dog that my friend is a white person. The dog that she has is a short-haired black dog. And this dog is no more menacing looking than any of the other dogs that I've seen. It's small and cute, and it looks like something that you would like to see on an internet video. But every time, without fail, that we walk this dog past a couple Koreans, they like run to the other side of the street. And the first couple times, actually, it's still comical, actually, because it's always funny to see people run from something that holds no animosity towards you. But every time that they see this, I mean, they'll be like 15 feet away, and they still like walk quickly in the other direction. School children, old ladies, 45-year-old men, people who could definitely take out this dog with like one punt if their life depended on it, are terrified of this tiny little black dog. And I think
just to be clear, a punt being the most effective form of combat against a dog.
I'm thinking like the way Baxter gets punted off of the bridge in Anchorman.
Oh yeah, perfect.
And it's
that
like
made the image so much better.
It's like clearly a stuffed animal that they're filming fall into the water.
Right, thank God. That's not a scene you want to make look realistic at all.
But yeah, so I think Koreans are scared of this dog, and I think it's because he's black, because he looks almost no different than the other dogs, except for the fact that he has black fur.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Anyway.
My next question to you, and it's very important, is how come I've never seen a dead pigeon?
Oh my God.
Do they die?
What if... Hold on. No. I can't believe I haven't seen a dead pigeon.
I know. You've seen so many pigeons and you've seen so many dead animals, but never the two shall meet. I've never seen a dead pigeon.
I've seen like an inordinate amount of dead animals, but yeah. Hold on. No, there's like... This has to be one of those things that's just so commonplace that you don't know you see them. Because I can picture one, but I can't think of where I can see one, you know? Like there must be...
You can picture it because it's pretty obvious what it would look like. It would just look like any other dead bird, but it would be a little fatter. And it would still look stupid even if it's dead.
I think most things probably don't suddenly look intelligent when they die.
Okay, that's a fair point. But I think a pigeon would look particularly still dumb even if dead. Like, you can definitely picture a dead with its beak hanging open and, like, a little bit of bird drool coming out.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, X's over it, cartoonish X's over its eyes to signify its lack of life.
Yeah. But no, man, I like my theory, and feel free to disagree with me on this one. My theory is that there's just dead pigeons everywhere, and we're always stepping on them, and they've become just such a part of our, like,
waiting through them on the way to work.
Exactly. So we just don't notice that there's all these dead pigeons. Now that you've like put it in my mind, I bet I'm gonna walk to work, which is like a 10-foot walk for me. Be like looking at all the dead pigeons, like, oh my God, they've been here the whole time.
See, I came to this conclusion the other day when I saw a dead bird outside of my school, and I saw it because a bunch of my students were like, "There's a dead bird outside," and I was like, "Okay, let's go look at it." So we brought the whole class outside. And I was like, "Oh, look at the dead bird!" Nice. But this is the second dead bird that I've seen in like the same, I don't know, mile radius from the school. But it was a pretty normal sight. Like, I've seen dead birds in my yard growing up. My dad accidentally ran over one with a lawnmower once when I was a kid, like forever ago. It was like a nest or something. It was really sad. But
wow.
But you've never seen a dead pigeon. And how many freaking pigeons have you seen? At least a billion, I would venture to say.
Yeah. A billion's right.
Anytime you've been to a city and you've seen a flock, you could like look up in the air, throw a dime up into the air, and you'd hit 6 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, given that this is our Halloween spooktacular, we're going to do the whole episode talking like this. I have a quote.
Quote me,
and
baby.
I wanna remind myself to plug in some nice diminished chords here, playing at a slow but steady rate, possibly increasing, possibly decreasing in tempo, creating an ambiance of spookiness and of Halloweeniness and of general frightfulness.
I can get it.
As I read this quote.
Okay. Cue.
They were in fact ghosts, man-shaped stains on the brightness of that air. And that's the quote.
Oh,
do you know that quote?
That's the end of it. I like that. But what was the context?
That is a quote from a book by C.S. Lewis called The Great Divorce of Heaven and Hell. I like that book. It's one of my favorite books. and it's very topical because for our Halloween Spooktacular first episode extravaganza, we're going to talk about hell itself.
That is super cool, and I can't wait. I especially can't wait because I don't know if you... I took this upon myself to look into different religions' versions of hell, and so I have a couple notes on that I'll share as you share your stuff.
That'll be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to sort of open up with just let's talk about some of the different like traditional ideas of hell and where that's come from. So that'll be perfect for you to share your stuff.
Yeah.
But I'll go ahead and say like what I did some research a while back and I didn't freshen up. But one of the interesting things about hell for me is like how we came up with it, because there's very little biblical foundation for any sort of like, you know, lake of fire or lake of burning sulfur sort of thing. And so I looked at like the traditions and the etymologies and everything a long time ago. And what I remember is this. Before, like around the time that like a lot of scripture, particularly Old Testament stuff, was written, the Jewish concept of hell was a place called Sheol, which is just, you know, it's a little place that it's a lot like the underworld in Greek mythology, where you go there and you're not retaining your identity or yourself. You kind of just turn into this, I think they called it a shade. And there's no like damnation or torture. It's just like this sort of like eternal wandering of the underworld where you don't really have any strong feelings about anything and you're not really a person. You're just like this shadow of yourself, or this shadow in general.
Sounds kind of nice, actually. Sometimes there's too many feelings and you just like to cut yourself off from it.
Exactly. It's definitely nicer than like the modern image of hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was Sheol, and it was a lot like the Greek mythology, underworld, Hades kind of thing, from my understanding at least.
Yeah,
and it also has nothing to do with morality or religion. It was just like everyone goes there was the idea.
Yeah, so as I was looking up stuff about hell too, this is something I also found common, was that for a lot of these ancient religions, there weren't really like reasons for you to go to hell. It was just kind of like it was the place that like everybody went to after you died, and like nobody really wanted to die because of that reason, because like just the afterlife in general was just sounded pretty bad. And you're right. I also looked up like Bible passages about hell, and there are lots of little snippets about saying like if you do this you'll end up in a bad place, or like the lake of burning sulfur is one that you said. But at least in what I found, there wasn't really like a passage that described hell like as we know it. Which was weird, because we all have like probably the exact image of our mind of hell when we talk about it, like fiery devil pitchfork type of place. But
I picture robot hell from Futurama, but with people instead of robots.
I picture hell from the South Park movie where Saddam Hussein and the devil are gay lovers, and there you go. And Hitler's down there too, and like some other like weird people. But you're right. There's not that type of imagery in the Bible really at all, and so I'm wondering where we all got this from.
Right. That's a good question. Part of where, I don't know, it's weird because you can see this evolution of the concept even within scripture if you go from like Old Testament stuff to like later New Testament stuff even, but it still never gets nearly as extreme as what we've got today. I think part of it was Dante's Inferno. When that came out, we all just like, it was just like a work of fiction, and everyone's like, this is such a cool idea. I love the way this guy describes hell, and now I think that's what hell is like. But yeah, I don't know. I think like, so, but from what transitioned from the initial idea of Sheol to the beginning of what we have today, from what I remember, from what I like barely looked up a long time ago, so all of a grain of salt kind of thing. But there was this place outside of Jerusalem, I think, somewhere in like the Hebraic kingdom of the time, where it was like originally it was like where some king went to sacrifice his child, because it was like he worshipped an evil god that demanded child sacrifice or something like that.
Oh. And
so he offered his child as like a burnt offering, and that was like the place where that happened. And so there was like a series of times when that happened. Yeah. And so that like it became known as like that's where you go to like set your children on fire for the evil god. Yeah. And then like I think later like it became sort of just like a city dump, where like Jerusalem put all of its trash and garbage into that city, and then like set that on fire too. I don't remember.
You're thinking of Detroit.
Right. What about we have a loyal fan base in Detroit, and they're not going to be happy you said that. Yeah, that's true. There's some good people in Detroit. But anyway, there's yeah. So it become like this like child sacrifice / trash / fire, just like really terrible place. And it was called Gehinnom, which I think means like in the valley of Geha or something, or maybe the king was named Geha, but somehow it's like Gehenna, and like that became like our idea of like damnation is like living there, and that's where we got like this burning everything, like all of that sort of torture from, is that became the image of punishment, and of like just like the association of it with sin through like, you know, obviously the child sacrifice is like a little sketchy. God doesn't like that. So the idea of like that being this horrible cursed place so distant from God. So that's like where the like image we have today, I think, originated, was from Gehenna. And so that's why you have like Mike Pence, king of Fiery Trash Mountain, is because of this, like, yeah, it's Satan, who is Mike Pence, and Gehenna.
Yeah, so I think that's definitely got to be where part of it stems from. And I also thought the same thing as you said before, which is that Dante's Inferno is probably also where a bunch of that stuff stems from. I don't know the exact... I'm going to look it up real quick. I'm going to guess Dante's Inferno came out in like the 15th century. Does that sound right to you? Or is that like... this sounds even too late to me. When did Dante's Inferno come out? I'm going to look like such an idiot when I learn this. Answer is... Oh, okay, not that bad. 14th century.
Oh, nice. It was very close.
I was only an entire century off, which when you're looking that far back isn't too bad.
Yeah, no, not at all.
But
I mean, that's
anyway,
pre-Enlightenment, so like everything for like a few thousand years, or not a few thousand, but a few hundred years was kind of the same at that point.
Right, and we've definitely had time to build on that idea that he laid the foundation for.
Yeah, oh yeah.
One of the most interesting versions of hell that I found was the old like Nordic Vikings version of hell, which like the Vikings in general are like super cool, and the way that they dealt with the afterlife and they dealt with their life on Earth was very interesting, just because they just you know, they were definitely the type of like live for the moment and like rape and pillage as many villages as you want because we're all going to die tomorrow type of thing. And so their version of hell was actually not, it was just like the afterlife in general, but it was called Helheim. And it was that's basically like a cute little name. Yeah. I really like that. It says that so you were sent here basically if you didn't die in a blaze of glory in battle, then you were sent here because you like that was like the only way that was noble of dying back then. And so if you didn't die in a blaze of glory in battle, you were sent to Helheim, which was a frozen wasteland of the afterlife, and the gates were guarded by, get this, a four-eyed hound, who I think we see in Harry Potter, named Fluffy. So that's perhaps where J.K. Rowling got that comparison.
Or in Greek mythology named Cerberus.
Oh, that one too. I knew it was popped up somewhere else too. Anyway, no, but that just goes to prove one of our points, which is that it all probably stemmed from like the same one or two stories, and they just picked and chose what parts they liked. But inside Helheim was a demon called Corpse Eater, which is just such a cool name. And he had giant wings that created the icy blast that kept this frozen tundra frozen. And so this big old winged dude named Corpse Eater would just flap his wings all day and keep the gates of Helheim cold for everybody.
Nice. I like that it's frozen instead of burning.
Yeah. I think that was in Dante's Inferno, the last circle of hell. That is freezing cold too, and not actually fiery. Like the other 8 circles I think are very fiery, but I remember in the 9th circle, there's only the devil and just a completely frozen like lake of frozenness. And I remember there's like 4 different rounds that you can go to in this 9th circle of hell, and it's just all cold and miserable.
Huh.
Yeah.
Neat.
I read this book in high school, and I kind of paid attention, and so this is just what I remember from that.
Yeah. That's something I feel like I need to read. It's such like a classic, and it's shaped so much of religion and culture. Mm-hmm. But it also sounds like, I don't know, if like it were written by a modern author, I bet I would think it was one of the best books ever. But written as it was at that time and in that culture of writing, I think I would be really, really bored reading it. Unfortunately.
I've been reading a lot lately, but like only books that were published in like the 20th or 21st century, and so they have like modern language. And I tried to go back recently and read this book that I had wanted to read from high school, and it just used all like really old language, and it was all trying to be metaphorical and symbolic, and I'm like, sometimes reading is not fun when you have to do so much thinking all the way through.
Yeah. Yeah. I like, I don't know, like, I think one of my favorite books is Count of Monte Cristo, which, that's an older one, but it's still like, I don't know if I've ever even read the unabridged version. Like, I've only read the abridged version because, like, there was so much emphasis on just, like, I don't think it was the same way with, like, Dumas, but, like, Charles Dickens was, like, infamous because he got paid by the word. And so he would just write these long, tedious passages. And that was just, like, part of writing at the time, and I just don't enjoy that. Like, I think if I can really get into it, and if the story's just that good, which I imagine Inferno probably is, but I don't know, it's so much more work to enjoy. Which, going back to our earlier conversation about, like, I don't even watch Netflix, I watch YouTube now. Taking any kind of effort to enjoy something. Yeah, really. So maybe that's something I should work on. Maybe I should read Inferno and come out a better man. But for now, I'm kind of satisfied just sucking and having a horrible attention span.
Yeah, I think that's something that you needn't. It's a piece of you that you needn't shun. Go ahead and be your short attention span having person. It works well.
I appreciate that.
Do you want to hear about one of the other versions of hell that I researched about?
Yeah, very much so.
Okay, pick 1 through 3. Those are they correspond to a version of hell.
Okay, I'm gonna do 3.
Okay, 3 is Mictlan. Mictlan is the hell of the Aztecs, and like Helheim, you didn't have to be bad to go there. You just had to be a poor warrior. You had to, die of natural causes after battle, or something that made you look weak in the eyes of your Aztecian friends. Mictlan is guarded by a big skeleton boy who has a necklace of eyeballs, and the gates of this place are surrounded by common spooks, such as rats and bats and owls.
Nice.
Yeah.
Like
so I feel
common
like
spooks.
I feel like as Aztec culture goes, that's actually pretty tame. Weren't they the type of people who ripped out like their sacrifices still beating heart and fed it to the gods?
Probably.
Or was that the Mayans?
I think it was probably both, but maybe a historian's listening to us and mad about that, me saying that right now. Yeah. So please tell us if we're wrong. But I want to say, in my head, Aztecs were like particularly sacrificey though, but I think they both did it.
But don't you think that version of hell is like, it's pretty bad, but it's not like Aztec bad?
Right, because like, I mean, sure, it's guarded by the spooks and the skeleton.
Who's got a necklace of eyeballs, by the way.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. Are they like wiggling and looking at you, or are they just dead eyeballs?
I imagine them to be wiggly, and they're all like looking in different directions.
Nice, cool. I like that. Oh, and I bet when you when you're peering around the corner, like trying to get into the gate of hell, like you see the skeleton kind of like just standing at attention, and all the eyeballs are wiggling, looking everywhere because they're the skeleton's eyes and they see in every direction. But as soon as you step forward, all of a sudden all the eyeballs like
are
focused
fixed on you.
Dead on you. Yeah, and it's like the creepiest thing. All of a sudden there's like a single like eighth note played by like 8 violins, is like and then oh my god. And all of a sudden, the skeleton slowly turns its eyeless face on you, and it's like the Mona Lisa, where you try to walk away, but it's still staring at you.
Them eyes is always on you.
Exactly.
Just like in all the Scooby-Doo portraits.
Yeah, exactly. This is my favorite hell now. I like this one.
Yeah.
You said this was Aztec?
Yeah.
I like Aztec hell. It's super cool.
I want to go there. Let's be bad warriors together. Dude, we're both going to be terrible warriors. We'll go to Aztec hell together.
Exactly. Dude, I love it. That'll be perfect. Oh man, let's bring the snowballs, the blue snowballs. Do like
a live podcast from hell.
On the streets interview. Do a live podcast from hell. Yeah, I think we can ship the bill to corporate like we always do for these on the scene podcasts that we do so frequently.
Excuse me, sir. It's good to see you here. It seems like you have had quite a rough time since sinking down into Aztec hell Mictlan. Tell us, what was your greatest sin that you had to come down here for?
Are you asking me, or are you asking an imaginary person who you're also going to be?
I'm asking you as an imaginary Aztecian who's in hell.
Got you. I wish I had time to prepare. This isn't me saying this. This is the Aztecian warrior who's in hell. He's like, oh man, I didn't know that there would be an interview. I've been here for so many centuries, and literally no one's ever came down and interviewed me. This is so. I don't know. Do I look okay? Like,
this is your
My
personal hell. Is your live broadcast on
Oh,
Alien TV,
no!
and you're embarrassed. Oh! And your pants are off. Oh! And that cute Aztec girl over there is looking at you. Oh!
Oh, that's actually a question I have. So, like, because Aztec women, correct me if I'm wrong, same historian who was mad at me for talking incorrectly about the Mayans, Aztec women weren't warriors, right? So, like, what about the women and children who died? Would they be... Or if you, like, are a retired warrior, and you're, like, just chilling now because you're 80 years old, and you did a lot of great war, and you're done with that.
So not this hell, but a couple other versions of hell that I read about said that pretty much all women died of childbirth until, like, I don't know, whatever certain date in semi-recent history, actually. But all women who died in childbirth went to their respective places' version of hell because that was seen as, like, weak, and also, like, nobody cared about women back then anyway. So it's safe to assume that, like, many women for centuries just went to their religion's version of hell because they pretty much all died in childbirth.
Okay, well, that makes sad sense.
Yeah, well, to each their own. His own. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess. It's like a 30 Rock in that one, Kenneth is, like, singing a song. I can't remember why. I think someone, like, asked him to sing them a song. And he's like, well, everyone who lived before Jesus is in hell. And then he gets, like, cut off.
That's probably the whole song because it's true. No,
yeah, probably.
I remember
it is
actually,
true.
That is, I think, the first circle of Dante's hell. I actually have it up right here. Let me read it real quick. Yes, Dante's first circle of hell is resided by virtuous non-Christians and unbaptized pagans and their babies. So so all those unbaptized people and virtuous non-Christians, they'd still go to hell, but they'd only go to the first circle, which is basically just limbo. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they can basically be good for, like, thousands of years and they'll be let out, which actually brings me to one of my next favorite forms of hell, which is Kassergan, which is the form of hell, or the version of hell believed by Mongolian shamanism. And in this version of hell, you are put into a boiling vat of tar forever. That's it. But there is one caveat. If you've done enough good things in your life, there's this big winged creature who judges however much good you've done in your life, and if you've done enough good things in your life, then you may slowly throughout the millennia rise to the top of this boiling vat of tar. And then eventually the crown of your head will poke out of the boiling vat of tar. And if somebody on Earth remembers how good you were and you've floated up to the top of this boiling vat of tar, they can send a guardian down to pick you up by the skull, and they can bring you to paradise. No word yet on whether or not you are still covered in that boiling tar when you reach paradise, but I would assume it takes a couple more millennia for that to crack off.
Interesting. That image, like, evolved over the course of your description for me, because at first I was picturing it like the, like, you know, old sitcom where they get captured by some, like, savage tribe and put in, like, the pot over the stew, right? And they're like, oh, what's for dinner? You're for dinner. Oh my god, I thought it was a hot tub. Like, that kind of thing. Yeah. Like, so I picture them, like, with their arms on the edges of the boiling vat of tar, but, like, no, they're, like, all the way in it.
No, yeah, they're sunken down to the bottom unless this big bird creature thinks that you've done enough good. Then you can slowly rise to the top.
Nice. So is it just, like, chilling on the edge the whole time, or what is it? Does it come and check every now and then? No,
the big bird creature allows you into the gates of hell, and I think he gives you probably, like, a slip on your way in if he thinks that you've done enough good. And he's like, okay, you're in here for the next 2,000 years, but after that you're going to start rising up.
Okay, weird. It's interesting that 3 for 4 of these have, like, a winged thing. Because in Inferno, you've got, like, Satan has big old wings, right? Mm-hmm. Not the Aztec one. That was the one that didn't have wings.
The Vikings
one?
The
Viking one, yeah, it was, like, entirely just a big dude with wings making it cold.
Corpse eater.
And then this guy has wings. I wonder because angels have wings. Is it, like, the difference between bat wings and bird wings? Or, like, I don't know, why does every dead entity have to have, like, a deal with its wings?
Yeah, I don't know. I always picture I always picture them as like spooky bat wings, but never a kind of wing that you'd want to touch, you know?
Right. Huh.
Dude, the kind of people who say bats are cute, you know, there's like that type of like intentionally quirky person who's like, oh my god, bats are so like underrated. They're actually really cute. No, they're not. These things are demons. These things they look the way they do for a reason. They hang upside down and cover themselves with their arms. They're not cute. They're not to be trifled with. I don't care if they only eat fruit or flies. You know, every one of us here knows somebody who's been affected by bat rabies. Meredith from The Office.
That's true. The both of us that is here, theoretically here being a figurative term because we're not in the same place, all the both of us have watched an episode of The Office.
Exactly. And I don't agree with the sentiment that bats are just cute and misunderstood creatures.
I don't know, man. I don't want to be that guy because I'm not. I guess I'm just gonna. Bats aren't cute. That's for sure. Like actually, maybe it even depends on the type of bat. I have seen pictures and videos of bats where I'm like, that's kind of cute. But I mean, like, obviously, the vampire bat is never cute. We can all agree on that.
But they all kind
of
look
the little
like
fruit bats and like little fly-eating bats. When in the right lighting, like if a Calvin Klein photographer comes up to this bat and is like, let me get the backdrop, let me get the spotlights and the floods and everything and get you all in the right thing. Okay, well now we're talking
about an entirely different situation. If I saw a bat wearing tidy whities, that would be cute AF. But
that's so true.
That's like, but we're not going to get into that. I'm sure there's some rule against talking about bats in underwear.
Yeah, but I mean like the idea though, like there's like really good photographers like there's pictures of bats where they look cute. But I will say, generally, bats aren't cute, but I am 100% team bats are misunderstood. Because, like, I don't know, like, the pool that I went to growing up, we had lots of bats and lots of frogs there, and because we would go there at night because it was open to members, because it wasn't, like, a exclusive kind of pool. It was just kind of like, there's a little gate, and we'll tell you the combination to it.
You don't have to justify your pool sneaking into me.
Okay, well, sure. So we would go there on, like, midnight swims, and there'd be frogs and bats everywhere, and I thought the bats were cool.
The other thing that I don't like about bats is that I think the general rule of thumb with bats is like the bigger they are, the more safe they are, and it's actually like the tiny ones that are scared that you should be afraid of. And I don't like that.
Really?
Like the bigger ones are like the ones that just eat fruit and flies and stuff. But the smaller ones are like the vampire ones who could like sink their teeth into your shoulder and suck your blood. But I don't like that I'm supposed to be not afraid of the bigger ones because that's counterintuitive to me, and when I see a flying thing, I don't want to have to judge its size before I do or don't run away from it. Right.
That's fair. I would say you don't have to be afraid of any of them though, because even the vampire bats, here's what they do. First of all, they don't even suck your blood. They they rarely even use their fangs, from what I've heard. They've got little hooks on their like little wing thumb things.
That's another thing.
And they just make a little tiny incision, and then it's like, it's not even, you won't even feel it. It's so nice and so soft and so gentle and sweet. You don't even feel this bat cutting into you.
And you only get a little bit of rabies.
Well, okay, I guess that is the thing, maybe be afraid of rabies. But the rest of it, you get like the bat, there's a little drop of blood comes up, and here's what the bat does. It doesn't suck it up, it just licks it up. And there's little chemicals on the bat's little tonguey that cauterize your little incision-y that the bat made, and it's all adorable and sweet and very symbiotic, aside from if you get rabies.
I don't like it one bit. I don't want to have anything to do with those bats. They can suck a fat one from someone else.
Fair enough. Also, well, the other thing is like it's 100% of the time cows and not humans anyway.
Yeah, well, I don't want them to suck on cows either. I like eating cows.
That's fair. I guess you don't want the bat to sustain itself off of a drop of blood from a cow, because later you're going to eat the whole cow.
Right. I want that whole cow for myself. I paid for it. That's my $4.57 Big Mac at McDonald's. I don't want any part of it going to another animal. Did that bat pay for it?
Those 2 drops of blood were the tastiest part of the burger.
Well, I eat it raw. It's got to be.
Oh, right. True. Got it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a response for that.
Well, here's my response. Let me tell you about the last version of hell that I researched, and then we can kind of compare it to more of Christianity's version of hell. This kind of hell, interestingly enough, is called Avicii, like the Swedish DJ.
Oh.
And this is...
I was going to say, I've heard of that. And then I was like, no, I haven't. I've heard of the Swedish DJ.
No, this is Buddhist hell, and
This is I did not think Buddhists had hell. Sorry
yeah, so I think this is... I think this is a specific sect of Buddhism. Oh my god, that's my religion. No, I think this is a Buddhist belief like long ago. I don't know if it's still upheld, but this was Buddhist version of hell. But it didn't last forever. Only trillions of years. So you were okay if you committed a sin or something. You wouldn't have to spend eternity here. Just a long time.
Right.
And It's still, even though it doesn't last forever, it's still really, really bad. And however, the only way you could get in here is by doing something terribly, terrible. For example, killing a holy person like the Buddha or a monk or something like that. Or, I found interesting too, your parents. You could get thrown into this Avicii hell for killing your parents. And this kind of hell is surrounded by iron walls. There are iron snakes and iron dogs that breathe fire on the inside. And you can actually die here, but you'll just be reborn into the same place. So this
is like the most steampunk hell ever.
It totally is. Like you definitely you see the kind of people inside, and they're all like. They're definitely all like steampunky, and they got like some of them have tamed the iron snakes. Others are just sent to a room where they have to die and be reborn over and over again by a fire breathing dog.
That's like such an interesting. Like they picked two animals to be the hell animals.
Yeah, snakes. So
you've got the fire breathing snakes, like sure, but like fire breathing dogs is a very interesting move there.
I think actually, the snakes were just iron and the dogs were iron and breathed fire, although that part was a little unclear.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Huh. Well, that's sad.
Yeah.
We've said a lot of sad things about dogs in this episode.
Yes.
I think we should move on.
Well, we talked really well about... We talked really good about... Really well? We talked a lot of good stuff about dogs in the past couple episodes when we were doing our Airbud trivia, so...
That's true.
They can take one for the team now and again. One thing I did want to say,
also,
though... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, we might, since I'm way behind on editing that episode, and because this episode is the Halloween one, and today is the day after Halloween, so it'll come out a couple days after Halloween, I reckoned we might swap the lineup for those two, just so we could have this one come out close to Halloween.
Sure, yeah, no worries.
Yeah, so maybe no one will get the Airbud reference, but they will.
Okay, sounds fine.
Cool, sorry, continue. Just wanted to make sure you weren't disappointed. When millions of people sent you hate letters about promising them Airbud references that didn't come up.
They'll come. They'll be there.
Right.
No, but one thing that I actually found interesting about all these different hells, so the four hells that I just talked about and the Christian version of hell that we're probably all most familiar with, is that there are a lot of common themes among these hells, which is uncomfortable temperatures, which is something that I think all humans forever have just been kind of pissed about. So it's easy to develop a kind of place where everybody would be equally as uncomfortable there, just saying, oh, it's really hot or it's really cold. You won't like it there. And a bunch of these different versions of hell also said that you can get there specifically by being mean to your parents. And so this made me think that hell is kind of just like a place to tell your kids about so they won't do bad stuff and they won't like end up in killing you in your sleep.
It's like a Hansel and Gretel thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen to your parents, you're gonna go to hell.
Because like a bunch of them specifically said one of the big reasons you can get here is by killing your parents or like being mean to your parents. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes I mean, like, if looking at like what the faith tradition says about hell versus like what we've sort of evolved it into, it does seem like a spooky story you tell your kids. Like, it's so reminiscent of like every what's the Hansel and Gretel guys, the Brothers Grimm, like all of the things that later became nice Disney movies, like all the original stories. It's so much like all of those stories.
Yeah, it's a little too convenient.
Yeah, that checks out. So yeah, I like that. I like that you brought that up, and that a lot of our imagery of hell has more to do with like spooky stories and like strange mythology than it has anything to do with like what we actually can glean from scripture, or maybe even prayerful discernment. Maybe you're in like communion with God in a way where it's like God just describes things to you, like, oh, hell's like this, I don't know if that's... I try to include things like that when I talk about discerning faith aspects, but I think really with this one, it might just be like scripture might be our only source for information about hell, and scripture's super vague about it, so that's why it's like weird. So yeah, let's go to having addressed how strange our image of hell is and that there's not a lot of like actual biblical foundation for it. Let's get into what the main thing for me that I wanted to talk about, which is the C.S. Lewis book that I said the quote from at the beginning.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh, wait. There's another thing I wanted to say.
Okay, give it to me.
What do you think of candy corn?
Oh, I think I'm in the minority here, but I love it. It's my favorite Halloween candy. Ooh, second favorite next to the candy pumpkins that taste almost identical, but they're a little thicker.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Thank you. I just wanted to say that. I felt like that'd be some good like banter for the Halloween episode. I had a note on my phone to bring that up, and I forgot.
Oh, yeah. I don't have anything to banter against that with. I just love candy corn, and I really miss it here. And I was somehow unable to get it last year, too, for some reason, if I remember. I feel like they're selling less and less candy corn every year because there's like a meme now about how bad candy corn is, but I think it's fantastic.
Right. Thank you. Dude, same. Honestly, like everyone, I feel like it's a little bit more every year, but people are always like, candy corn's so garbage and everyone hates it. And it's like, no, I've always liked it. And I think you feel too strongly about this. I love candy corn, but I'm not going to like post a bunch of memes about like, oh, candy corn's the best Halloween candy and everyone should love it. I mean, it's just, like, even if you hate this candy, like, no one's posting memes about how bad licorice is, but everyone knows licorice is disgusting.
Right. Licorice is not good. Although there isn't even, you're right. Candy corn is far and away better than licorice. And again, I'll say, specifically the candy pumpkins are just so excellent.
Oh, yeah. Those are like, I can only have like 1 or 2 candy pumpkins, though. Because those are just super, like you said, they're super thick.
Yeah, super thick.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's our Halloween-style banter for you. I hope you enjoyed it. Basically, the message of it is that candy corn is fine, and even if you don't like it, just calm down.
Yeah, back off a little, dude. More for me, then.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So yeah, as I was saying, C.S. Lewis wrote this book called The Great Divorce of Heaven and Hell, which is a response to an essay that I've never actually read called The Great Marriage of Heaven and Hell.
Ooh, okay.
And I don't know what is in that. I probably should have read it before we started this episode. But a long time ago, there was this essay written called The Great Marriage of Heaven and Hell that put up some like theological concepts about what heaven was and what hell was. And I guess C.S. Lewis didn't like that because he wrote a whole little novella called The Great Divorce of Heaven and Hell.
And
it's just called The Great Divorce. Well, I'm going to give you a little synopsis.
Yeah, give me the Spark Notes.
Cool. So we open up on our narrator. He's at a bus stop, and he's chilling in line, and there's all these other people in line, and everyone's complaining. And they're like, wah, this bus is taking so long to get here. I should have just stayed at home. Oh, this line sucks. I don't like the people around me. Wah. You know, just think back to, like, being a kid in the bus stop for school at, like, 6 a.m.
I like being at the bus stop.
The kid there who's, well, you had a different bus stop experience than I did then. But, like, I'm thinking, like, when I was a little kid, there's, like, there's the little kid near you who's crying. There's the bully there who's throwing bugs at you. It's, like, it's not cool. And so everyone there is complaining about this bus. And they're like complaining about the town too. They're in this mysterious town, and you're like, what town is this? And some of these people are just like, forget it, I'm out of here. And so they leave the bus stop and they go home, and you're like, wow. And the narrator doesn't seem to know what's going on either. Even though he's in this bus stop and he lives in this town, he's kind of just like exploring it as if he just got dropped there the way you did. Like, oh, this is And so anyway, eventually the bus comes and they all get on the bus, and the bus does not drive forward, rather it drives upward, like in Sky High, the Disney movie.
That's a underrated movie that I haven't seen in many years, and I'm sure it doesn't hold up.
You're dead on about that. I watched it for some reason last summer, and that is 100% correct.
Well, I don't want to hear any more negativity about that movie. Go on.
Gotcha.
I only remember positive things about it.
Right. So yeah, they get on the bus. The bus goes upward. Everyone's still kind of complaining and being to each other about the whole thing. And our narrator is looking out the window, as you do on a bus, and as they're going upward, he realizes rather than getting smaller, the town is getting bigger and bigger as they get further away from it. And Whoa. He's like, what's going on? And what he realizes is that the town is constantly expanding and growing, just at such an incredible and alarming rate that even as you're seeing more of it, there's more of it to be seen every moment.
It's like the ever-expanding cosmos.
Exactly. Much like the cosmos, also decaying into entropy, because we learn, maybe around this point, I actually haven't read it in a while, but sometime around this point, you're like, oh my god, the town is hell! And so, the bus is leaving hell. And the thing about the expansion is that, theoretically, hell is a town where you can get whatever you want, but because people get whatever they want, they're just like building things for themselves and sort of expanding outward and away from one another. So that's why the town is growing. Anyway, So the bus goes up and up and up, and they get to this spot, and they all get out of the bus, and all of a sudden they're all these little ghosties, and they think like, oh great, I got ghost powers, I can phase through walls like Danny Phantom, but they're actually wrong. Opposite, they can't phase through things. Rather, every step that they take on the grass there, the grass is so solid to them that it pierces their little ghosty feet.
Aww.
And some people are like, really, it's like at the bus stop again. Some people are like, this is stupid, I don't like this. And so they get back on the bus, they're going to go home. And eventually, these spirits come. And the spirits are like the ghosties, but they're not ghosties, they're spirits. And so they interact with the grass and all the things around them on a pretty regular level like you or I. They're just chilling. It's like their home. And so the spirits come sort of one by one to lead the ghosties off. And as like the spirits come and bring their ghosties away, our narrator just kind of like follows them around and just totally eavesdrop on everything that's happening, which is rude, but it's a great plot device for the book because now we have this narrator telling us everything that's going on.
Convenient.
So he follows like different like ghosty spirit pairs and like listens to them as they go. And a lot of the ghosts will be like, oh, blah, 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 blah. It's interesting. And you sort of gradually realize here, the same way you gradually realize that the old place was hell, that this place is heaven. And so all the ghosties are like, blah, 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 blah. I've been in hell, and I'm trying to see what it's like up here. I'm going to come up here. Here it's better up here, so I'm trying to explore that option.
Thinking about moving the family out here next summer.
Yeah, and so the spirits are all like, the spirits are obviously very spiritual and angelic and being like, oh, but my child, what you don't understand is blah, 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 blah. Not in like a discouraging way, like go back to hell, but in like here's what you'll need to do. Let me help you do this. Here are the challenges that lay before you. Let's be a team. But they're being very like ethereal and like holy about it and weird. But yeah, and so he's following these pairs around and sort of like getting an idea for what's going on. Yeah, and you know what? We'll leave it at that. That's because like beyond that is mostly just describing heaven.
Okay.
But so for maybe we'll do an episode on heaven and we'll pick up where we left off in our description of the Great Divorce.
So if there's a moral of this story to be taken away, is it that you should do the hard work and suffer through the BS and remain on the bus, so to speak, so that you achieve this great place far, far away from hell?
That is a valid interpretation of it. I think part of the challenge of this book and what I like about it is that it's not like you don't just sort of have one moral. It's more like just like a theological sort of. It's a theological concept presented as a novel, and I think partially just because Lewis didn't want it to be like taken as like doctrine. He wanted to be like, these are my musings around the idea of heaven and hell.
Okay.
So I'm gonna write it as a novel so you can sort of interpret it. But yeah, it's not got like one firm moral to come away with. It's like in each of the little like conversations he eavesdrops on, you sort of get like a different idea of like what we're getting at here. There's like lots of little stories that sort of add up to one big concept, but no clear moral necessarily.
I dig that though. I know C.S. Lewis is a really prolific writer, and especially a Christian writer too. Although I've never actually read any of his like openly Christian stuff. I know like Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe has its Christian motifs, but so that sounds super interesting. I like reading stuff like that definitely has like an intended message. Like C.S. Lewis's is obviously to describe this divorce of heaven and hell, like you said, but without being like in your face about it. Like you can just read it as as a cool story if you wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's going to is like exclusively Christian stuff. I think this isn't one of those necessarily. I mean, it does deal with heaven and hell, but I don't think he rarely uses either of those terms. Hell is sort of referred to as like that town, and then heaven is like the place where they are. So they sort of refer to it as the real place, because the idea is like everything there is so solid. That's why they suddenly realize that they're little ghosties and that the grass is piercing their feet, is because they're just as solid as they ever were actually. But this place is just so much more real and so much more complete. And so yeah, that's
So wait, the place where the grass is piercing their feet is the good place?
Yeah, because
That
and that's
sounds
the thing is
ouchy.
because it is ouchy, but that's the thing is all the spirits that like that are like leading them around, they're like they used to be them too. They came to this place and they weren't like totally complete in their own right either. I just realized I keep like holding my phone up like an old person, so you're looking at my forehead. Yeah, but, like all these spirits like it was sort of like as they spent more time in this place and interacted with the completion and the pureness and the fullness of this place, they began to become more complete and pure and full as well. So it's sort of like almost eating the fruit of that place. Like as your body becomes integrated with it through what you walk on and what you breathe and the food you eat and the water you drink, you become more full and more complete as to the idea is I think like the person that God made you to be sort of. And who we are in hell and on earth is so much less than that,
And
theoretically.
and the people who got off the bus early or who didn't even get on the bus in the first place when the narrator was waiting in the town, are those the people who chose like material things like the town offers, as opposed to a life of deeper meaning and seeking something else?
Right. Yeah, that's part of it too, is like each person sort of has their own reason. But yeah, a lot of it is that. A lot of it is materialism. A lot of it is like isolation. A lot of it is just like pride. A lot of it can be just like a lack of like wanting to put in any sort of effort. Like these are the sort of people who watch YouTube videos instead of reading Dante's Inferno. This is just
God
the
help
people who
them.
want to like deal with their own situations and not improve themselves. But yeah, so what we're talking about though is hell specifically. Let's do another episode and talk about heaven, and we'll talk about more of that aspect of it. Which, granted, the book focuses a lot more on heaven than it does on hell. But I think for me, this book is the best concept of heaven and hell that I've come across in my life, because it doesn't present either one as like this place of like eternal torture or eternal damnation or like burning sulfur, or you're just like singing choir praises all the time necessarily. They're both the thing that heaven seems to focus on a lot in this book is the community and the reality of it, whereas with hell a lot of it seems to focus on the sort of like the Yahwist interpretation of sin, where like pride is the ultimate sin of humanity, where it's like your own arrogance, your own ego, your own desires for your own good are what drive you there. Because like they talk about there's like this one description where Napoleon, like the Napoleon, he's so like grandiose and like so self-important, what he did, and there's like, and they mention other like Mussolini does this or whoever does this, like they just keep building towers and statues and castles to themselves and never being satisfied, and so they're growing further and further outward to the outskirts of the town, where they have these magnificent structures all to themselves, and they're just pacing angrily back and forth in their own little properties that they created like on a wish.
Yeah, they're always pushing people away and expanding their own what they own themselves without ever actually building that community that they see in heaven.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things for me, like I like the idea of pride and the significance that it plays there, but I think when I look at sin, I get a little more vague than that, because I sort of see sin as anything that retracts you from God in any way. So that often is like rooted in pride to a degree, but it can also be something that like just anything that dishonors the image of God and someone else, anything. And I think this image of hell as being this like totally isolating place where you can have whatever you want. It's not like a torture place. It's exactly what you make it to be, but it is you continuing to isolate yourself from God and from other people. And so that's, I think, for me, I mean, it's probably not theologically accurate to say, obviously this is a novel, but I'm not going to say that hell is this place where, you get to build your own castles whenever you want, but like the idea of hell being pure isolation, that's what I like.
Yeah, no, it sounds like It sounds like it's saying that hell is kind of what you make it, and almost like, not to sound too hipster, but like the real hell is the one we're experiencing on Earth right here. Because so often on Earth, like we do things that like push other people away, and we do things to like build up our own castle while also pushing other people away. And I think that that is kind of the comparison that he seems to be drawing between this hell town and like the world that we actually live in right now.
And that's another thing is like they do sort of talk about hell being like a mentality rather than a specific place. So like that goes to the idea of like hell can be on Earth, heaven can be on Earth, which is like not an original thing. C.S. Lewis didn't come up with that, but the way it's portrayed here is really cool.
That does sound cool. I'm gonna have to read this. The divorce between heaven and hell, you said?
It's just the Great Divorce,
the Great
and then
Divorce.
Like the full implied title is the Great Divorce of Heaven and Hell.
Okay.
And so there's some really great quotes in it, and I want to read some of the quotes and let me know what you think about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. There are only two kinds of people in the end: those who say to God, "Thy will be done," and those to whom God says in the end, "Thy will be done." All that are in hell choose it. Without that self-choice, there could be no hell. No soul that seriously and constantly desires joy will ever miss it. Those who seek find. To those who knock, it is opened.
Interesting. I like that. I missed the middle part there when I was thinking of Louis C.K. when he said there's only two kinds of people in the world: people who pee in the shower and liars.
Oh yeah, I'm willing to make that an official stance of the podcast.
Same.
Not that it takes a lot of boldness to agree with Louis C.K. these days, but yeah.
Well, I was in huge disagreement with that actually until I tried it, and I will say conquering two birds with one stone has never felt so freeing.
Exactly. It's a great thing. And I will say it's probably a little easier for dudes because you can like aim it away from yourself, try to get it like straight in the drain. But yeah, I've also heard, this might be a myth, but I've also heard that it's good for the drain too. Like it sort of clears the plumbing a little bit.
Probably, if you drink a lot of like straight acid. And
yeah, which I do. We all do. So
right.
Perfect. Yeah. But yeah, so this quote though, I like what it says because for me, one of the things when I read this book that really made it so interesting to me was it was the first like major piece of like culture, I guess, that seems to promote a fluidity between heaven and hell, which was interesting given that it's about the divorce of heaven and hell and that they are so separate in a sense. But you know, there's the bus, you know, like so much of Christian ideology around heaven and hell is that once you're in one, and that's that.
Yeah.
For forever. Which there's no way I can make any sense of that. I just don't see why that could or should or would be a thing. And so I like that they have the bus, and I like that he says here, all that are in hell choose it. Without that self-choice, there could be no hell.
Yeah, it's, it's reassuring to know that you have the power to get yourself from one place to the other.
Yeah, that just feels more real to me. I don't know. To whatever degree heaven and hell can feel real to a person who's not in either one, that feels real to me.
I think it feels real because he's using things like cities and buses and like other people that we are like tangible human things that we can grasp. While you know, other portrayals of hell are like, you're in a big fire pit forever, and it's like, oh, I've seen a fireplace once, but I don't really know what a big fire pit looks like, and this big devil guy doesn't seem too real. Yeah.
Well, Mike Pence.
Yeah, right, but he doesn't have wings that we've seen.
That's true. One of these days, he's just going to take off his coat. When Donald Trump gets impeached, which won't actually happen because if he was possible to get impeached, it would have happened by now. But in this imaginary world where Donald Trump gets impeached, I'm picturing that happening, and then Mike Pence just takes off his coat and giant bat wings sprout for him.
And flies away.
Fun. Exactly.
Straight up.
It's like, I'm president, and just flies away forever. Like, I guess he's still president. Anyway, here's another quote. This one's pretty straightforward, but I like it and wanted to share it with you and with the listeners at home and on the road. There have been some who were so occupied in spreading Christianity that they never gave a thought to Christ.
Ooh, definitely agree with that one. There's the kind of people who, you know, spread their belief before spreading the actual message of love and acceptance, and their main goal seems to be how many conversion points can I get before I die.
Yeah. And like I don't know, I like to fantasize about like if I were a talk show host and had like the founders of the Westboro Baptist Church on my show, what would I say to them? And yeah, I think that's, I mean, obviously I don't think they would just be like swayed by anything that I have to say because I'm just some guy and they're just some guys. But I don't know, there's like things like that I would like to try to convey those ideas to people, and I like that C.S. Lewis is doing that so well. Or did that. Is he alive?
I was just going to say...
He's dead for sure, right?
I don't know. Should we look it up? I feel like I would know it if he's dead. Is C.S. Lewis dead?
I mean, he probably just like died before we were born.
Yes, he's dead.
Yeah, okay.
Wow, he died a while ago. 1963.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, even if he like hadn't died of whatever that death was of, he would be dead by now then for sure.
Yeah. He collapsed in his bedroom at 5:30 p.m., and died a few minutes later. Probably a heart attack.
Oh, that's sad. Anyway, here's another one for you.
Yeah, hit me with it.
And this is another one that speaks kind of to, like, that last one didn't really have a lot to do with hell, but I liked it. This one goes back to the topic. This is what mortals misunderstand. They say of temporal suffering, no future bliss can make up for it, not knowing that heaven once attained will work backwards and turn even that agony into a glory.
Turn even that agony into a glory. Heaven will turn that agony into glory.
Yeah. What do you think of that?
I think that's hopeful. That's very nice.
Yeah, that's nice. And that, again, speaks to, like, the fluidity. I don't know. I feel like I'm being a little redundant, but I just really like all these quotes and all this in this book, and I want to recommend that.
These are all quotes coming from this novella that you were talking about?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Ooh, I've got another one for you. This one's good because this one applies to us. Or at least we'll discuss that after I read it. It says, every poet and musician and artist, but for grace, is drawn away from the love of the thing they tell to the love of telling, till down in deep hell they cannot be interested in God at all, but only in what they say about God.
That speaks poorly of us, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, because I think this, I mean, it's not like a Bible verse, but I want to say this passage from this book definitely seems to imply don't make a podcast where you just say whatever you want about God.
Right. Well, I have no dog in this fight, so I'm okay.
I might be in trouble.
According to some guy who died in 1963 and wrote a bunch of really good books, you might be in trouble.
Are you talking about John F. Kennedy? He died in 1963 and probably
that was a rough year.
Wrote something. Yeah, it was. Holy jeez.
You know that the year the Oreo was invented was the same year the Titanic sank?
That makes sense.
Yeah, 1912 was
rough. I would have guessed. Wait, you don't like Oreos?
Oh, I do. Sorry, I meant it was like a tumultuous year. A lot happened.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. A lot. Let's see. Do I have any other quotes I want to share with you? I don't know. I have one more. I want to kind of end on this one, though.
Okay, that sounds good.
But yeah, do you have anything else for the good of the order? Anything you want to say about heaven? I don't feel like we really necessarily established anything in this one, but we had a lot of cool ideas that were not our own, and we just sort of carried them forward and put them all in one place for you. Yeah,
I just wanted to talk about hell and how different people see it. And that's interesting.
Yeah, there we go. And spooky. So happy Halloween, folks. Well, I'm going to go out on the quote, but before I do, I'll say if you have any questions, corrections, or suggestions for us, feel free to hit us up on
all
Facebook.
Of our social media.
Hell If We Know. Yeah, we are at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can email us at hellifweknowpodcast@gmail.com. And please rate us on iTunes, because that's something that is supposed to make a difference. It hasn't happened yet, so I don't know if it does, but we'll let you know. We'll give you live updates on what happens in our lives as the ratings start to pour in.
Go do that.
Yeah, so please do.
Or you'll go to 5 different types of hell.
Right. And here's our final quote for this episode. Hell is a state of mind. He never said a truer word, and every state of mind left to itself, every shutting up of the creature within the dungeon of its own mind, is, in the end, hell.